Right. It's now 3 p.m. Monday, November 18th at 3 p.m. for a special meeting of the Board of Directors, Georgetown Divide Public Utility District. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Absolutely. Director Sanders.
Present.
Director Stovall.
Present.
Treasurer Thornborough.
Here.
Vice President Seaman.
Here.
And President McDonald.
Here. Director Thornborough, would you like to pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mike, I got so much hair now, it feels like I got a hat on all the time.
You don't have that much hair.
I do.
Sorry.
They're all lit up there.
Yes, it's just Sanjay.
Oh,
She's,
okay. All right, I'll now talk about the special meeting public comment notice. Under government section 59954.3, public comment at special meetings of the legislative body is limited to the items listed on the agenda. Public comment will be taken at the time following the agenda items are open for public comment by the board president. Please note that the guidelines for the public forum as they appear on the meeting agenda. As a reminder of the Brown Act, the public must address all their public comments to the board, not to the staff or the other members. And due to the Brown Act limitations, the board is not able to discuss or take action on those items not on the agenda, but public comment at the special meetings of the legislative body is limited to the items listed on the agenda.
We'll just take public comment during each particular item today.
Okay, 1 and then 2. Okay, so with that, the first one is consider candidates for the nomination of Mountain Counties Water Resources Association Board of Directors and authorize staff to submit the associated forms.
Yes, thank you. So this is a bit of a timing issue. This happened to come up very recently, right after our last board meeting. And unfortunately, the timing in which they wanted the paperwork back was November 27th. This is typically something that we hear and see during board reorganization of who wants to represent these different associations. Just because of timing and this special meeting, it was just an apropos time to have it on the agenda. So what we are seeking and what Mountain Counties is seeking is a potential board member to exist on their board of directors. It exists as 4 water district members and 3 board of supervisors throughout their different service territories. They run from Alpine, El Dorado, Calaveras, Placer, Nevada County. They have a pretty wide territory. So what they do is they have a 7-member board. They have 4 water agency members, 3 different boards of supervisors, and they are seeking several spots for water districts. I believe it's 3 and 1 board of supervisor member. So if anybody wanted to throw their hat in the ring, we would take care of all the paperwork and see about the potential of them getting elected. This is not a guaranteed spot. It is still an open election for all the members of Mountain Counties.
And this was something we put our hat in the ring a couple of years ago.
We did. Director Seaman volunteered to potentially serve. She ran. Unfortunately, she was not successful in being elected. And so this is the next iteration. So every 2 years they run this election.
So the existing board that's there now decides who they're gonna hire for
No.
the replacements?
No, the member agencies do. So we vote. So say you want to throw your hat in the
All
ring.
the agencies vote on
Correct.
who they want.
Correct.
You know.
And there's a list. You can see the long list of voting agencies.
Yeah, there's quite a few. So if anybody wanted to be interested, I guess you could throw your hat in the ring and we could take a motion to put them on the docket.
What?
Well, we'll have to borrow Steve's hat. Oh, here's one. Here, I'll throw it.
Oh, we can use the proverbial hat.
You got George Hackman.
What your question?
Well, what's the benefit to being on, to having somebody?
To help make decisions that affect the rural water agencies of the Sierra Nevadas. So these are all, Mountain County specializes in smaller water districts that are in a specific area that have specific challenges, i.e. fire, water supply, water quality. Some of the same challenges that we face are gonna be faced by these other organizations. And, the collected voice is helpful in lobbying, for finding grant funds, for working on different programs. I'll be speaking at the Water Forum on Friday. They asked me and a couple other general managers to talk about water needs for districts within the Sierra Nevadas and what specific challenges we're facing in the future and what kind of help that the mountain counties can provide with them. So it's overall, this is very similar to like an Aqua or a AWWA, where they're not really a trade organization, but they are a regional organization that can help with lobbying and other kind of things.
Is there any overlap with what Mike does currently here?
Is there any overlap? I'm not sure I understand the
They're,
question.
I mean, they're separate, so they cover the mountain counties, they do their own legislative advocacy, they also have, at least once or twice a year, they try to meet with, groups from the south to get south and north together, so they understand each other's issues, and so, they don't have, competing interests, so they realize we're on the same page when it comes to water management, so.
How often do they meet and where do they meet?
They usually meet virtually, I believe, board members wise, and I'm not sure if it's bi-monthly or quarterly. I don't think it's monthly, they don't meet monthly.
What I saw is they meet quarterly, and I didn't see this many on the list that were expiring this year. There's more expiring next year.
Yeah, so they, every 2 years, they have several that expire, and so,
No,
yeah.
I'm just saying, I went online to look and they have multiple ones for next year, but I only saw actually one that was expiring this year.
So it's three, one board of supervisor and 3 water agency representatives.
I understand.
So,
Anybody?
I'll go again.
I would defer to you.
She lost last time.
Well,
Maybe, I mean, you have a
I know,
fair
but I went and had a hard talk with the guy running it. I said, hi, this is the face that
Okay, yeah.
you guys.
share. Didn't vote for it.
and I can work on, if you wanna run, I can work on, what is the, kissing a few hands and shaking a few babies for you on Friday.
I'd like to nominate Director Seaman to take another bite of that apple.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nope. None opposed. Motion's unanimous.
You didn't say anything.
I was being nominated.
You can still vote on yourself.
So, motion passes. Nicholas, would you process the paperwork for,
Yeah,
Yes,
listen.
we'll
and
take care of it.
and grease the skids if you will?
Grease the skids, I'll grease the skids on Friday. You wanna go on Friday, cause there is a water forum, on Friday, and I can try to see if
That's the one on the 22nd.
the 22nd, yeah.
Isn't there a virtual part of it?
Maybe, let me find out about that. It's a 10 to 3, 10 to 2, something like that. It's in Cameron Park at the country club there, so.
Right.
Okay.
I hope we put a little more effort into it this time than you did last time.
You were there. Why do I have to double up?
Mhm.
Okay, moving forward to fun and games on item number 4, Proposition 218 rate setting discussion and possible direction. And then, one of the directions that's possible is discussing the proposed rate 218, setting the options and provide staff and consultant possible direction regarding the rate setting structure. Nicholas, you got the floor.
Yeah, so, really quick to give a quick introduction to what we've done here. Director Thornborough and, some of the other directors have expressed interest in continuing the discussion on cost and service analysis and potential rate setting. So what staff and, water resource economics have done over the last couple of weeks is we have worked on looking at potential revenue sources that are gonna come in and where the rates could potentially land and how the staff might recommend where the actual physical dollar amount rates may land with the community. So the recommendation from Water Resource Economics is to present a 15% increase in the first year, for 10% increases over the next 4 years, or excuse me, 10% increases over the next 4 years. And there are some kind of things that we see in the near future that could potentially change those numbers to the better for the community. And so we are going to present those numbers and what we worked on and what it actually looks like. So, Director Thornborough, since you called this item, we have a short presentation. Sanjay and Nancy have a short presentation.
Can I ask a question? When did we get this in advance?
It got emailed.
This?
The,
No,
so this is a presentation that's basically evolved over the weekend. And it has various different scenarios of revenue and other expense offsets that we can foresee into the future, into the near future, and how they may affect the rate percentage increases that the district would require. So again, Director Thornborough, since you called the item, would you like us to kind of go through the scenarios first?
Yep.
Or would you, okay. So Sanjay and Nancy, I see you're on. I think we're gonna give you control, and if you want to present the couple slides that you have and kind of what they mean, I can also add some color as needed if that's something you would like us to do.
Good afternoon, board member, president, staff, and public. It's my pleasure to be here again. As mentioned, we have a short presentation. Nancy, would you like to share the screen? Does Nicholas, people have a copy of the presentation too?
Yes, they all have a physical copy.
Okay, great. All right, so let's get started. We'll go to the next slide. So this is the original scenario where we talked about, so first, whenever we do a financial plan, there are uncertainties about the future. I think we all can acknowledge that. If you go back 5 years from now, say that's 2019, do you think the last 5 years would have occurred? If you did, you're very insightful. I definitely did not anticipate the last 5 years to occur. So there's uncertainty about the future. We don't really know what's going to happen. We do our best educated guess based on the information available to us, publicly available, and we do use that information to decide rates. There will be something that will occur in your agency, I promise you, that we did not account for, that may be negative. And there also may be things that are positive. So those are the uncertainties that we're surrounding ourselves with. And the question is how much uncertainties do we want to deal with and buffer in this process, and how much we want to be willing to roll the dice? And that's a board decision. So the board decides that about how close they want to go in making decisions and rolling the dice, and that's that's a policy. So based on our professional judgment on information provided to us, we're proposing a 15% increase, then followed by 10%. Interest earnings at 1%. That's what most agencies do when we work with them. Some agencies can do better, some agencies do worse. I was just informed just on Friday that you are able to do better than 1%, which I was surprised by, because a lot of agencies get around that much. So we could update that if we feel like interest rates will be higher in the future. The two charts that we're showing you here is the revenue requirement chart. Those are bars. The bars are our expenditures that we project out in the future. The solid line is the revenues that we're anticipating in the future, and the dotted lines are with the percent increase. So ideally, the line is the revenue is above the bar, so that we're meeting all our expenses, and we're not necessarily dipping into reserves too much. It's okay to dip in reserves once in a while. That's normal. And when you do a water utility. The next chart, fund balance, is the ending balance. The dotted line is the reserve target. The reserve target includes all these different things, capital, emergency, all these things. We're not funding it every year. We're just funding it. We're just trying to meet that target. It's the balance. It's like, how much money should I have in my saving account or my checking account? And the green line is the ending projected balance. And as you can see, we are meeting that. And in 2029, we're slightly above it. And this is based on what we know of information. I suspect something will occur in your service area that may have a negative consequence. And thus we would want to maybe be slightly above in the reserve target in 2029 to buffer that uncertainty and not have to do another rate increase or another Prop 218 notice in the 5 years. So we were asked to look at some scenarios. So let's look at the next scenario. So this is one with a higher interest rate, 2.4%. This is what was given to us by staff to use as a percent of interest rate. If we did that now, the 15% go down to 14%, and the following years can be, instead of 9, it could be 10%. And we still meet the reserve targets.
Can I just jump in, just so you have some color and some clarity as to where the 2.4% comes from? We took an average of 4% for the 2025 year, 2.5% for the next 2 years, and 1.5% for the last 2 years of the 5 years, and averaged that out to 2.4%. That's where we came up with that number. We do anticipate that the interest rates, as they've already started to come down a bit, will continue to come down, and we just don't know at what level. So being a little bit conservative still here, and trying to make sure that we hit the right targets for this interest rate number.
And I wanted to add some here to support Director Thornborough's projection or point of view. Although short-term rates in the last 8 weeks have come down 1%, the long-term rates, which we're primarily in now, that was one of the main reasons to getting this investment policy, is that we could lock in rates for an extended period of time. So when we comes around to budgeting, we could plan 5 years, because I don't know what our average maturity is as far as the duration or the yield. But what's happened now is, because we're a part of the business cycle, whereas commodity price inflation is of concern. So this kind of goes against what Director Thornborough was saying. Commodity prices, just like gold and silver, they're up about 40% this year so far. This is the time where interest rates go up. Now, I don't want to lose anybody here, but since they lowered interest rates in the last 8 weeks on the short term, which we're not really in anymore, the long term went up about 2/3 of 1%. That's why mortgage interest rates are going up right now. And that's primarily where we're invested. And so I believe, because we're locked in for whatever that average maturity is, we might do a double check on that with the investment folks, because I don't know what it is offhand. It could be higher than 2.4%. Now, if our average maturity is 10 years, if it's locked in, we could lock in 4%. But if our short-term maturity is closer to 2 or 3, maybe not. So I believe 2.4 is conservative still. Okay, I just want to be on the record for that, and for whatever it's worth, that's my experience. Go ahead, Don.
I want to know, maybe what I don't understand is, if we have a pretty good idea, because we're locked in on say we're at 4%, why aren't we using 4%? That's real. And then you take the rest of them as an estimate of what it could come down, but not, I mean, because as it is, you're showing us at an extremely lower rate than what we're getting from our investments right now.
Yeah, so that's why we averaged what we expect them to go to, or could potentially see them going to. So 4% is what we do see for 2025. However, we don't know what 2026, 7, 8, or 9 would look like. So
Right.
That's why we took an average of the 5 years.
But if you're looking at, say, what are we making right now? I was told we were making over 4.
We're making about 4, right about 4.
I thought it was over
So
5.
If we use,
so we have,
that's what I heard too.
we have multiple different things that make different rates. If you were
So
to.
if we average those out,
Yeah,
that's the number we should be
like she's
using.
saying, that's locked in for 4 years now.
It's not locked in for 4 years.
Our
So
average maturity, what's our average maturity?
every 6 months, we reinvest in something else. So we have an average maturity is about 4% current.
As far as years too. That's maturity, like if this, what she is saying is that if we know we're gonna get, let's say whatever 4% now, and we've got CDs and treasuries that go out 2, 3, 5, 10 years, and the average is 5-year maturities, we could lock in that 4% for 4 or 5 years, and it's no variable. You don't have to average it. You just have it.
I mean, you have,
Or if nothing else, at least work with the numbers we have that are real.
Yeah.
Instead of doing a best guess, which isn't real.
so that we know what we have for a year.
Okay,
A
that's
year-
not on here.
Well, so I'm trying to explain, we took an average because we don't know what year 2 through 5 is gonna be.
How do you have maturities in these investment accounts they're not gonna go down. You have them laddered. And the whole point of that is you could count on this 4% plus.
You guys, if you, at this point, you guys can tell me whatever number you want me to put in there, and that's fine.
Okay,
We're trying to be conservative here and understand that we don't see the future, we can't see the future. These could go, the other interests we have, like California class, other things could go below 1% before year 3, year 2, we don't know. This is a very conservative look at what you could potentially earn in interest. And it doesn't necessarily affect the overall rate setting. You can say, okay, well, we earn more interest. We don't need to set the rates as high because we've earned so much more interest.
well, that was the whole point of the investment policy, was that we don't have to be in these short-term maturities. We could plan budgets out 3 to 4 years without wondering if it's gonna go up and down because of Federal Reserve at every 6-month reserve meeting. So we're locked in.
Yes, so we also utilize California class, which is the one that everybody says we are not getting over 5, and we still are getting over 5 in that one. But we're utilizing that one as our savings account, so we don't have a traditional savings account anymore, and that one's much more variable than it is the long-term laddering that you're referring to.
So what is that as a weighting of the total pie?
It's about a quarter.
Okay, so instead of 4.5, it's 3.5, but not 2.4. So anyway, that's to support with Director Thornborough and Director Seaman.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And we are open to setting the number wherever you feel is most appropriate. My only recommendation, and I think Sanjay, if you wanna maybe weigh in on this after I say this, is the more conservative you are, the better off you are in the long run, because you can always adjust later based on what actually happens. You don't wanna assume that you know more than you know, and that something is gonna come in at a higher rate than it comes in at a lower rate.
And I just wanted to support that. Typically, haven't been in agreement with Director Thornborough, but
Or me,
huh?
or me.
Okay, as much, but I just wanted, now I get you on this one, and that's why I threw it out there for whatever it's worth.
So this is a good time for you as a board to come up with a consensus number that you'd wanna put in there, so you can see what realistically you could set the rates at. You can still adopt the rate cap of the 15% with the 4 10s and not ultimately set the rates there. And so just because you have the potential to go that high, nobody's suggesting that we go that high. We have lots of factors that could come into play that would ultimately allow those rates to be set far lower.
Director Saunders?
Yeah, fine, but we should, when you progress forward, I know every 6 months it changes, so interest rates, we really can't predict the future, but we can do year to year, so I would, recommend keeping the first year where we know we're gonna be at, and then you can keep the conservative for the projection, but every year we can actually plug in that actual number and adjust accordingly, so that's the way I feel with that, so. If we know the first year is whatever percentage, we should put that in the first year. We can put the more conservative as we go out, but then every year we reevaluate and put in the actual percentage.
Sure, you got checks and balances, I'm okay with that too. Director,
Think he must have talked.
Well, the thing that really caught my eye on this whole thing is in the rate study itself. and it shows the interest income for,
Page,
25. Do you have the rate study?
you bet.
That a girl. For 2025, it shows, interest income of 350,000. The next year, in 2026, it shows 43,000.
It's because it goes back to the 1% of the.
That's my issue, is we go from 350 to 43, that seems to me way overly conservative, and then the next year, in 2027, it goes to 34,000. In 2028, it goes to 20,000, and then in year 5 is $3,500.
I understand, I mean,
Like,
so. This is a great opportunity for you to tell us what you want to put in those boxes, because that's a policy decision that you can set where you think these numbers may or may not be. So you can turn the dial however you want to turn the dial. This is what this is. Setting the rate cap has nothing to do with where you actually set the rates. This is one of those dials where we actually set the rates, and you can say we're gonna get 8% interest, and that's unrealistic, but you could set it however you think you want to set it. So this is a great opportunity. If somebody wants to throw 5 numbers that we want to put in those boxes so that we can see where we could potentially land, let's do that.
Before I go, Director Seaman. Yes and yes. You're right, but we have that option anytime to, in midstream, to change it. Why guess? Why even take a chance?
But why we are here is to look at these numbers, drop them if we can. We're giving justifications on dropping them for the first year. And we're not talking about saying so much no to because we accepted, the study, but we want to see what the numbers are. And that's why I assumed we have everybody virtually and not live, is because we're asking to make some adjustments on some numbers, see what the money coming in is, and how does that line up on this bar graph, so that we can make an educational.
100%.
And that's what we're doing. We're not just sitting here flapping our jaws saying, oh, we want to change it. We would like to see these numbers changed to see how it would line out of what we got and what we will be projected to get.
I would 100% agree with, that's what I'm
Okay,
asking.
then we're done. Next.
Director Stoll.
Wait, hold on. That's not fair.
Oh,
It is.
That's not fair.
Finish your sentence.
I,
Finish your sentence.
go ahead, it's fine.
So what I heard, Sanjay, is if we use the staff recommended 2.4%, that when you run that figure through your spreadsheet, so to speak, is that then that would result in a 1% decrease in the revenue requirements over the next 5 years. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so if it was double that, then it would be a 2% decrease.
And maybe we can go into the model. We do have some more scenarios we wanted to present, so
Yeah,
I would prefer we go through the presentation, and then after we do the presentation, we can go into the model, and you can give us directions on interest earnings, and we can update the presentation, the model.
Perfect.
Thank you. Okay, what's next?
Go ahead, Sanjay, thank you.
So the next one is the solar offsets. We were informed that you're investing in solar. And so if we did that, we would have some savings there. This is without the interest earnings, so we're just doing isolation here, just one thing at a time, and then we'll add them all 3 together. With the solar, it will be 10% and 9% each year is the increase. That's a bigger decrease in revenue adjustments. The next one is the CIP reduction that we were informed of some kind of reduction in CIP or revenue coming into play.
I have a question
and-
about the solar. Can we stick on solar for a second?
Yeah, let's take each segment, Sanjay, and give directors a chance to comment or questions. Go ahead.
If I recall looking at the cost of service study, my recollection, or I could probably maybe go back and find it, is that when you looked at the increase of PG&E, what estimate of increase in PG&E costs
So I'll answer
that you
that.
have every year.
We put a 5% escalator, so currently we're spending between 220 and 250 at the Sweetwater treatment plant. And one of the CIP projects that we've explored is putting in a solar field that would completely offset that cost. And if you notice in year 2026, which we probably will not be able to get this online for the first year of the study, I have included 0 offset. But even including an offset in year 2 of the 225,000 and then doing a 5% escalator from there, you still can lower originally set, because this is an expense that we're not having on the system anymore.
My concern is that I think the initial 5% increase in PG&E is not
So again,
reasonable. Yeah.
I'm gonna sound like a broken record today.
Yeah.
We can set
Yeah,
the
we can
percentage
adjust it, yeah.
increase at 15, 12, 20, 25. We can set it wherever you want. I can't see the future. And if I could, I probably wouldn't be here as your general manager. Just like Sanjay says, he wouldn't be here being with us virtually in this setting. We would all be living on some tropical island somewhere, and because we'd understand the markets a lot better than we do. But
Be that as it may, when you look at the rate increases of PG&E over the last,
they're very
Several years.
significant.
they're not even close to 5%.
But there are certain years where they don't do rate increases, and so it's kind of an average, so like next year, if they don't do it, I don't even know what they're gonna do, so.
Yeah.
If they don't do a rate increase, then, you know, the 20% is gonna be 10%, because the one we got this year was 19.2, and if we get a 0 this year, then we have to average that to 10. And so all I'm trying to do here is be very conservative, and again, we can always go back every year before we set the next set of rates and looking at these numbers and assess where we actually are and re-plug in numbers. This is gonna be an ongoing 5-year process of setting these numbers, setting these rates, and making sure that we're spot on and we're not overcharging our customers.
PG&E has averaged over 20 the last 4 years.
And that's my point, is that I think if you look at the value of the solar investment, it's gotta be a greater return than what's budgeted here at 5%. That's the point I wanna make.
Sure. Thank you.
Go ahead, Sanjay, I just wanted, that was.
I think they're my-
Still on the same
Nugget.
topic? Go ahead.
I was wondering, I was looking at your graphs, your bar charts, and it looks like, so 26 is basically equal to 25, and 27 is kind of coming up a hairball. But then all of a sudden, what is this, why is that green bar on both of them on 28 low and then 29 high?
So I can answer that.
I'm asking,
But it's an actual question that the district provided to him, so it would be much better if I answered the question. In 2028, there are several CIP projects that are coming due in that year that are larger than in the other years. And the green bar goes down because those fund reserves need to be spent on several CIP projects. So if we were to show the CIP, it's averages about $700,000 in the first 3 years. And then it goes to about $900,000 in the 4th year. And then it goes to, I believe, 800,000 in the 5th year.
maybe it's a confusion with me, but I've seen that CIP projects can be pushed at wherever we find, the best fit for them, not specifically at 1 year over another.
So that is absolutely correct. This is based on, so the first 3 years, we know generally what we're gonna do for CIP. And in year 4 and 5, we're relying heavily on the castle asset management to determine what the numbers would be for those projects.
Director Thornburg?
Are you done?
Yes, thank you.
But the CIP, you're saying that it's a lot more than what it says in the rate study says 606.
So if you
$1,000 a
look,
year.
yeah, if you look at, there is I don't have a rate study in front of me, but if you look, there's actually it's not, it's average is what we said.
Right.
It kind of fluctuates though.
Right, but your lowest year, I think you said was like 700,000 or 800,000,
Correct.
but the average, and then you said it was going up and up and
So
up.
we took a few things out from that I originally, with the numbers I have in my head, we took a few things out, so let me see if I can remember what it is.
Well, I don't even know what you took out, I just,
Well,
you took some things out that brought the average to 606.
yeah, and so it generally
Okay.
in the year four, it still changes, so we. I think with your help, we looked at some of the projects and the needs and where we could potentially have lesser increase and lesser costs. Those were some of the numbers we landed on, and I just, in year four, it's a little higher than the other years.
Director Stovall?
And what you. Let me rephrase that. How is the unknown potential cost of a tunnel built into the CIP?
It is not at the current moment, because we do not know,
We
it
just
it
don't
could
know.
come back in as $0, it could come back in as $10 million. And so we just cannot,
We just don't know at this point in time.
if again, you know,
Yeah,
this,
okay.
just like everything else, if I knew, then I would have it in there, but since we don't have any assessment as to what it's gonna cost, it's just, I can't.
And we're gonna get that estimate within the
I think
next
they're doing
6
it
weeks.
today, I think they did it today,
Okay.
so I was gonna be there to be with them while they were starting the project and then here with you guys.
Director
Because to
Song?
me, that's a significant
Huge.
CIP, and tied in with that is the potential grants, but then I have concern about having a cap on the rate increase. I mean, everything depends on that tunnel,
Absolutely.
period. Okay, but I wanted to bring up the tunnel and see how that was or was not included.
Director Saunders?
Yep, and if we all remember, the Castle study kind of projected it was 1.4 million per year that we had to put in. I'm sure each of us put in our CIP offsets, and that's what's got it down to where it is now. So we went from
We took,
1.4 million down to,
and we said that at 700,000, so we didn't even take the 1.4, we actually reduced it to 700,000 because we realized some of that we can offset with grant revenue.
Right.
Sorry, Frank.
Sanjay, please continue. Go ahead, Sanjay, please continue. Thank you.
So the next scenario is the CIP. And that's a reduction in CIP, and that by itself would lower the rates to 10% then 7% each year.
So this is, this is,
Quick question. Is that, this 10.77 is,
only if each one of these happens, we put them all together at the end.
They're independent of each other.
We add them, we add. all the-
okay, so
it's getting-
that's not based on this as
We're
well.
building the house right now, and
Okay.
we're gonna put the roof on at the end. So this offset is, there's some potential revenue sources that we see coming in the near future that could be utilized as kind of rebuilding the reserves that we have, and that could be utilized as an interest earning vehicle. And what we're seeing right now is the potential for between $350 and maybe up to $450,000. It's really hard to estimate this one in additional interest income that we could generate. And so what I did here was add in this additional interest income to then offset the CIP costs. So much like in the past, our interest income has been utilized to offset CIP costs. We are estimating that about $350,000 of additional dollars from this interest income could be utilized to offset CIP costs. So this is not the $350 that we have currently that Director Thornburg was referencing. This would be an additional $350. And then just so to be really clear, we did I believe it's a 1% de-escalator on this to show that that interest income could potentially go away as the market changes.
No, I'm really confused. Where is this interest income coming that you show it every year? Huh?
It's from a potential revenue source that may be coming into the district very soon.
Oh.
Potential.
Okay,
This is one of many
Potentials.
potential revenue sources that we can't put in the budget yet.
okay.
But if
Then
we
I have,
have a rate increase that's a higher rate and it does come in, then it gives that opportunity if something happens.
There's a really good chance we know about this before December 12th.
can I ask another question?
Sure.
on what interest rate is those figures based on?
4%.
So you got that at 4%, and then we have the stuff we already have invested at 2.4 or less.
So that's why I did the de-escalator going down 1%. So it probably could go down even lower, but you know, this is again, a moving target.
Right, but this is showing, this, this is making no sense to me, because you got it down here at 1% for each of the years starting in 2025. You got the percentage at 1%,
So that's.
but you have these,
Those don't mean the same thing. The 1% you see on the top is the original number that was in the original rate study, so that's just to keep it nice and even. You're gonna see at the end, let us
Put
build
the
that,
roof on when the roof goes in.
yeah, let us get to the end and you can see where we could potentially be at.
well, I'm not sure I wanna put a roof on something that has shaky studs.
But the stuff, so what
No,
part are you seeing
no
that's shaky?
foundation.
I don't understand why in these projections here, this CIP offset, you're looking around 350,000 or down 330,000, all the way out to 2034.
So we could go even more conservative and we can make it less.
Well, you're using, my point is you're using two different figures in two different scenarios. In this scenario, you know, that's a lot of money, and in the scenario with the money we already have invested, that is locked in, you know, it's a lot less.
So you're saying it's a shaky foundation because you're not letting us put all of the pieces. You're taking my studs away before, we're just building the different pieces.
Okay, keep going.
So go ahead, Sanjay, go to the next one.
So the next scenario is we combine them all together. So this is with the interest at 2.4%. The solar and interest and then the offsets for CIP. So then we can do 6% and then 5% each year.
So this is what. This is the house. We're now building the house, we're putting the roof on it. If we were to increase the interest from the 1% that Sanjay originally estimated to the 2.4 that we just discussed, and we could use different numbers. So if you want to use, you know, more solid numbers from either, you know, Director McDonald's numbers or Director Seaman, any recommendation, this is the 2.4. So this is giving us more interest income than was originally given to us. Then this also includes offsetting the solar, the expense for the power. So the 225, that adds that in. So it's basically adding it in by subtracting the expense. And then adding in the additional revenue of CIP for the revenue that we see coming in and this additional interest income. So we can utilize different numbers. This is just to look at what we have, to look at potential income and expense offsets to see where the potential is to land. So staff and Water Resource Economics work this out, and it is looking like if everything happens the way we hope it happens, which we can never see or say that it will, we could go potentially a 6% in the first year and then 5% in the next 4 years after that. So the potential rate setting portion of the December 12th meeting could look something like this if all of the news comes in very favorably.
Sanjay? I have a problem changing the years 2 through 5 when we have the option of doing it anytime. So,
You're only setting the rates for the first year.
right, so we could set the first year's rate at 6% or 2% and leave them 10, 10, 10, 10, 10.
Correct.
And that's just a max, so leave them at 15 or now the first year, we could lower them to 2, but we could leave the rest of them out at 10. And come next year or the next budgetary cycle, lower it then.
Not exactly. So what you want to do is you want to set the cap. So the 15% is, and the 10s are still the cap. So
Okay, I'm good with that.
you're setting a cap, and then you're doing an ultimate rate setting of say, if the scenario hits, then we're at 6%.
Mhm.
So you'll set the rates at 6% and not the 15. So you'll still have the potential
Mhm.
for the 15 and the 410s, but you're actually setting the rates much lower. So that the customers are not paying a 15% increase, they're paying a 6% increase.
Okay, go ahead.
Did you have something else you wanted to say?
No, No, I understand and I agree, and that's, as long as we have that option anytime down the road,
Yes.
set the cap. Go ahead, Director Seaman.
Not to set the cap, hold on, I just wanna make sure, not to set the cap, is gets set once. The upper cap gets set once.
Yeah,
You have the option of going within that cap at any time, lowering up, as long as you don't go above that cap, you are legal. You can set the rates anywhere underneath that cap at any time during the 5 years.
that's what my mind said. It didn't come out my
I
mouth.
just wanna make sure that for the record it's clear.
That's the story you're going with?
Yeah,
Well, I
unfortunately.
saw the lips moving, that's why I gave it back to him, because he was still in
It
motion.
wasn't engaged.
Yeah, so, yes, what you said, that's.
So so I guess another problem we have, well, one, I still would like to see better numbers than what I see here. But two, we also, what happens to that 5% that's looming over the irrigation? Is that what I'm, so if we set it at 6, is it 6 or is it 6 and 10 or 11?
So it's proportionality, so that 5% that you reference will always be added on to whatever the percentage increase is.
So we can't ditch that that what you're trying to say?
Unfortunately, that would be against Prop 218.
because of what, but you changed it at the last meeting.
It got changed because of the property tax calculation that was miscalculated, so we had to change it before the final report came out.
So clarify, what I heard is that given the potential of additional revenue, we may only need 6% the first year and 5% the years after that. Is that what I heard?
That would be a best case scenario, yes.
Another question, I recall that at one point in time, there was a hard number or estimated number for what it would cost every year. And on the October 3rd meeting, there was a comment about the fiscal impact of the additional revenue would be $145,000 for the rest of the 24-25 year, and then roughly 300,000 for the next year. So when we're looking at what the rate increase will bring into the district, we're only talking about roughly 300,000 a year.
So I think that's the math that it's approximately there, yes.
Okay. So when we do look at the potential of water transfer, we're looking at the potential of reducing that 300,000.
If all the revenues were to hit the way they should or could, then there is a potential that there's even a lesser increase, yes.
Director Seaman.
Except for irrigation,
So irrigation it's a different animal, unfortunately. It's
still water.
a proportional argument though. That's the problem. Is the original proportionality was incorrect. And so now the proportionality is changing slightly. So that it's 5% difference in the proportionality.
So how are we gonna look at this? And that was one thing that wasn't taken into proportionality, is how much of a loss we're going to be incurring, which will then impact the revenue. So by hitting them with 11%, if we take 6%, roughing it, and we lose, like what we lost was 50 inches last time. How is that going to make this, how are we gonna make these customers whole? Because I see us taking a revenue decrease for that 5 months, because of the maybe 50 inches we lose that we could have sold. And I don't wanna hear, oh, we could sell it outside of our county, because that's not the number one place it should be being sent to. We should be trying to increase our customer base, not decrease our customer base. And clearly, all I've heard for the last how many months is how we kind of don't care about our customer base when it comes to irrigation customers. We want to ship it and make money that way. And I've heard that on more than one occasion from you specifically. So,
I,
yes, you have.
hold on, that's not fair, cause
It is fair because,
I have 100% not, and I will even reference the open meeting that we had at the town hall for the water transfer forum that we did at the Pilot Hill Grange, and somebody asked me if they came in and asked for 100 more inches, I will find them 100 inches. I even have a customer who's looking for buying 10 additional inches on a full canal line, and I am working out how to increase a full canal line, an additional 10 inches, so I really, that's very disingenuous, and it very hurt, that really hurts, because I love this community, and I don't wanna see that water sold anywhere else if it's being purchased here.
then I would like to find a way to get this 6% being the 6% across the board. And is there a way to somehow work this out where it comes out a little more proportionality, considering that's only a numbers crunch, here and there. You know, cause I see also our property taxes go up every year. And why isn't that proportionally showing?
It'll continue, so the property tax is being split 88% towards water and 12% towards irrigation, and that will also be part of that argument. It's already calculated in there. I'm not sure, Sanjay, do you have an escalator for property tax in there? I'm not sure. No.
No, we didn't have a property tax increase. If you want to, we can put that in there if you like.
That has to be in there.
But we don't know what that is every year, so we don't know what that is until the county tells us what the new increase is.
Well, you know, the maximum it can be.
Yeah, 4 million, our GAN limit is 4 million, so, unless we wanna raise property taxes, like a bond measure, or
No,
a
I'm not
measure.
saying that, but just our normal, what is the
about-
average? You're looking at the numbers over time, so from 5 years ago to today, what is the property tax increase per year? Take that average, and now you're giving a conservative number of property tax increases over the next 5 years. I mean, it's the same thing we've been doing here.
So we can absolutely calculate those numbers in every year after the first year and get a real number.
And part of this is too, what we need to look at, if you're looking at proportionality, the irrigation customers are usually, I would say, are most of your bigger pieces of property, which brings in more revenue than the others.
So maybe, somebody else can help.
And if I
answer this
just-
question.
Do you mind if I jump in? This is Lutfi Karu from BBK Legal Counsel. I think what I'm hearing are some policy issues and discussions that are absolutely appropriate for the board to have. But what we're talking about here, it's not so much a revenue as a cost issue, it's the allocation of costs. So to the extent that there are policy decisions, policy motivations to sort of help one customer class or over the other, I think that can be addressed through, looking at how you want to use your unrestricted revenues. I think what we're doing here with rate setting is just allocating the cost based on the cost of service. And so I just want to make sure that, from a Prop 218 perspective, the only thing we can think about is the cost objective and the pricing with respect to the actual cost of service. And that's what fluctuates between the two customer classes. So the other thing I do want to point out, I just kind of want to echo what's been discussed earlier, just because I think it is important, when we talk about rate settings, when we talk about the rate setting process, what we're doing is we're taking assumptions and projections over a 5-year period, kind of looking at what the worst case scenario is in terms of what funding we need. And that's used to establish what the maximum rates will be in any year. To the extent, and this often happens with a lot of agencies I work with, you don't get to the worst case scenario, you get to something different. You have more revenue come in, you have more rainfall, you have other issues that come in that bring in more revenue, and you're able to adjust your rates on a year-by-year basis. And this is again policy for the board, but this is just my insight from having experience with many of these. If you start to whittle down on your assumptions to the point that you try to make them as exact and you start to lose the conservative nature of the assumption making and the projection making, you could find yourself in a position where you're not generating sufficient revenue if things go poorly in the next couple of years from a revenue perspective. But again, these are all policy decisions. From a legal perspective, you do have the discretion and authority every year to take a fresh look at your rates, to figure out whether your assumptions were too conservative, to adjust them downward as needed so that you're able to provide savings to your customers.
Luffy? So what I understand today, what we need to agree upon is to determine whether the cap or the maximum is what was established by the rate survey, and then make an assessment based on our projections for what the first year should be today, and see if there's any changes between now and December. And then we'll be ready to make our first adjustment to the first year's increase, right? Next meeting.
Right. I mean, if there are significant changes that would
Yeah.
adjust, yeah,
But you're adding
absolutely.
5% to one of them.
And the one thing also, I know I'm just being nitpicky here. I don't want to call it a cap because it's not, I mean, yes, it is the maximum rate, but it's the maximum rate based off of reasonable assumptions. You have, one of the best consultants in the state that's putting this stuff together. And so he has his independent professional knowledge that's the basis of having these rates set. Of course, things change because assumptions are 100% of the time wrong. So that's how you get that downward adjustment. But it's not like you're setting an arbitrary cap. You're saying this is what we think the rate could be based on these reasonable assumptions that we have.
Right, so we're establishing what that, I won't use cap, but does everybody know what I mean? The maximum. And then we establish that today, and then we have a chance to make the best estimate based on what we know now today, and with the final say so after the hearing.
Right.
That is correct. So, but we're not making any actions today. So all
Right.
this is informational and to get more pieces of,
Okay.
But you're adding 5% on one of them.
Hey.
I wasn't done.
No, she wasn't, but okay.
Irrigation.
Yeah, the
If we
irrigation.
do 6%, that means irrigation is gonna go up 11%. Water goes up 6, irrigation goes up 11. What I'm saying is, most of your, like, if you look at property taxes, a lot of the property taxes, the bigger pieces of property are generating a lot of that income.
Mhm.
So, okay, those are the irrigation customers.
Did he say that was not a Prop 18 deal, but a policy?
What? I think what I was saying, and I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
Focus on numbers.
So I don't want to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, what I was saying was I think, and that's a really good point that you're making. I think the 11%, what we're looking at there is like the costs of service. When we talk about the property tax, that's non-rate revenue. So you can use that any way that you'd like. So from a policy perspective, if you want to use it to offset the rates for one customer class over another, and I'm saying this knowing that Nancy and Sanjay are probably thinking that they've already programmed these into the rates, but I mean, my point here is if there's a policy decision to use the property tax in a different way, for example, to allocate more to one customer class than another, that's where the policy discussion comes in. But when we're talking about the cost of service, that's where that 11% comes from. And that's its own consideration separate from how much property tax is generated.
Okay, thank you, Director Thorne.
First of all, I got a couple things to say. First of all, for the past several years, the property taxes have increased a little over $100,000 every year. That's why my calculations, I have that $100,000 in there every year. I mean, in this rate study, it's reflected in the first year, but then there's no reflection for the remaining 4 years of the property tax. Second of all, I think if I understand what you're saying, Donna, is that 12% of the property tax revenue is charged for irrigation, put to irrigation. So, if that revenue comes up, then their revenue comes up, as well, the 12%. And the final thing that I want to say is that the issue that I have with all of these scenarios here is that I don't see any of them we have any kind of finality when it comes to set the rates for January 1. And I would like to propose that we take a little different thing that I started to look into, and from what I see, it looks like we've got an opportunity to pick up $1 million, pretty much guaranteed. that has to be verified, and going through all this, when I'm going through the rate study, and I see that on the loans that we have, or the debts that we have, there's one of them on there that we've been paying for a long time, is for a loan that was taken out for Walton. We pay $25,000 a year as the payment on that. But for some reason, we have over $1 million in that account. And I just found out a little while ago that today, that the balance owed on that loan is $128,000. So, okay, so
What's wrong with this picture?
what's wrong with this picture? Okay, so that's right, so now if we just pay the stupid thing off, and then we have roughly $1 million left over, that would, you take 250 per year for 4 years, and that would big time offset the loss of this, projected loss of all this interest. To me, that's a more sure bet than waiting for the solar, waiting for, anything else that may or may not happen.
Just so you're aware, that million is already accounted for in our investments now. So it's a restricted fund that we already invest. So we invest all of the money that we have in our bank account. We don't have like a special bank account that's sitting with $1 million.
Okay.
It's part of the 7.5 million that are sitting in the CDs. We're allowed to invest it as a restricted fund. And then any of the interest we generate, we're able to utilize for the district, but it's sitting there. It's not like some magical $1 million that we haven't accounted for.
Why is it even in there, I think, in the first place?
Well, there's that. Now, if you're saying it's restricted, then, what's gonna happen to it?
Well, once you
But I
pay
thought
off
we
the
had,
loan,
I
it
thought we had
becomes
like
100.
9 million invested.
So it's 7.5 plus the 1.5 million that's in class.
Okay.
There's two, we have about 7.5 in CDs, and that's kind of our unrestricted and some restricted funds that we invest to generate the 4%.
Director Saunders.
Yep, I know the proportionality we're looking at, treated water is 6%, raw water is 11%, and the raw water is kind of tied in with treated water as well, so the raw and treated together comes to, when you're looking at just the treated water part, it's 6%, when you're looking at just the irrigation customers, it's 11% on their side.
Can I clean that up, because that's not 100% correct.
Well, that's what you have said.
It's 6% for all the water.
Correct, yes.
And that it is, treated water has a variety of different percentages of
That's
increases
correct. Well,
based on
the
meter size. And then the irrigation customers have a potential of 5% over whatever we set the rate at. So that's why, if you look at like a 1-inch meter customer, they have the potential for having a 50 or 60% increase.
Yeah.
And so it depends on which customer class, and that's where the proportionality comes in. It's customer class that makes it different.
Well, I'm talking revenue, not the actual cost of service, because I know there's a difference between a 1-inch and 5/8 inch. So the revenue portion would be 6% on a treated water customer and 11% on the irrigation water
Yeah.
customer. That is the revenue that would increase. The actual cost of service may be different, especially if you're out of district versus in district. Moving forward with irrigation, we do know we have the ability to get the hydroelectric online, and that's raw water, and that will give us another significant chance to decrease irrigation as we move forward. So moving forward, we know as we get hydro online, that's going to be beneficial to the irrigation customers and help stabilize their rates as we move forward as well.
And we're already utilizing, I believe, 73% of all hydro revenue to offset irrigation rates, because most of the water that flows through the hydro comes and is delivered to those irrigation customers. So that's already something that we took into account in this calculation. So if we have an increased revenue for hydro, it will also go there. Unfortunately, any expenses could also decrease that number. So it's a balance, and we don't know where those all will end up at the end, but it will probably be a net benefit to the irrigation customers when we take those contracts back in-house.
And then the other thing I wanted to say going forward is, as we set these limits, remember, the other thing that's really not calculated in here is unfunded liability. So we also remember we have to plan moving forward to try and get that cow trust to help offset our unfunded liability, because that is now a GASB thing, which is put in with our audit, and it does offset our overall budget as well, so we have to remember to keep that in mind also.
Thank you. I have a question, just point of clarification. I'm perfectly willing to be, shown where I'm missing the target here. Director Thornborough and Director Seaman are advocates, for the irrigation and the difference in cost with the increase, how much 6 versus 11. How is that unlike, let's say there was an advocate such as myself? Because ALT is also experiencing a disproportionate increase in the overall rate of service. How is it similar or different than, go ahead, you know what I'm saying? They're,
Well, let me give you the scenario.
yeah.
Treated water, wastewater, you have to have.
Mhm.
Irrigation, you do not have to have. So we've already seen the last time we had an increase, what our revenue had dropped at a lower rate. It was about 50 inches we lost in the first year.
Mhm.
And so that's what we're looking potentially lose that income also. Besides customers that are our community, that is the whole bottom line to this community is fire protection, green belts. There's a lot of other scenarios here that don't have no value in this 218, which, when they were burning Albert Lake trails, they came into the ponds at Cherry Acres to dip those ponds to put Auburn Lake trails out. That has no value in this scenario, and that's what's sort of sad. We can't put a value on the numbers of customers and inches that are gonna be lost, and maybe ponds that are actually gonna dry, because people can't afford to have these ponds filled. Mine is mainly to fill ponds, to keep that pond up in case, and to put a green belt around my house for protection for fire. That's why I have irrigation. And, in the bigger scheme of things, we have, 40 inches going to one of our customers? What if they drop 20 inches right there? That's a big cut. And that isn't taken into account the amount of loss we're going to revenue into this scenario either. It's only what income we can get.
All right, thank you.
Just to clarify, Sanjay, in looking at this concept of proportionality, where the 218 requirement is that proportionality of the distribution of revenue we get through rates has to be in a very clear proportionality between raw and treated customers, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there has to be a story that's articulated, that's explained. We have, been down this road a little bit. We explained this at several board meetings before we wrote the report. The sort of where we are now, though, is we wrote a report saying this is proportional. So if we want to backtrack and do something else, we could.
I just wanted to
But we
clarify
have
that.
a report that says something else. So it does, it can open us up to liability. I mean, Lufty will comment on that. That's my concern.
Yeah, so as a board, if we look at additional revenue that is not rate generated, we're not tied by that proportionality at all. If we get water through hydro, we can divide how that revenue is placed, whether it's CIP or irrigation or anybody else. That's a board decision, correct?
Well, you would want to have a story, a documentation that shows that. I mean, it's a board story, but as long as it's not non-Prop 218 related, but there needs to be documentation. So it's not as simple as, do this, please. It's then there needs to be it needs to be documented. It needs to have the math behind it, and then we also need to show that we're not having treated customers bear additional costs.
Okay. And another point, I went back and looked at the revenue generated from taxes for the last 5 years as part of the finance committee. And it's close to an average of 2.5% a year. As if we look back.
Right.
And what amount did you put in for a property tax increase, Sanjay?
We didn't have any increase.
Could you, stick in, say, a 2% a year on there and see? What
Yeah,
that
we can
does?
do that. Are we ready to open the financial model and look at scenarios?
I throw that in as, you know, hey, that's Windows.
Well, let's finish and let, Director Thornborough get his, and then we'll put our ones to put in on it.
Okay.
Oh, I did have one thing to add, and this is just to clarify something that you said earlier, and this is maybe help everybody understand that, why it changes in the fourth year. The numbers for CIP are 580 in the first year, 580,000 in the first year, 671,000 in the second year, 688,000 in the third year, 750,000 in the fourth year, and then in the this is a big one, in 2028 goes to 1.04 million. And then in the fifth year, it's 700,000 again. So that's why you see that little dip in the fourth year, is because there's some additional CIP projects that we have planned.
Okay, well then if you have that in there, that differs than what I saw in here.
So that's in the,
You got it set at it said 606.
so that's an average. It was an average of all the 4 years, I believe.
Well, every single one of those numbers is way over 600,000 that you just gave me, so how could the
580.
average be?
580 is the first
Okay,
one,
what's the next one?
671. I
Okay.
don't know, where did you see 606? I didn't give you that number.
No, it's in the rate study.
I don't know where you got it from.
Well, from Sanjay.
Yeah, but where? That's what I'm trying to figure out, is where you saw it. So we
Let's see
could-
if it's in my questions. I think it was in question here. CIP, here we go. Let's see, that's gonna be on page 22, looks like.
Page 22 of the rate study,
Yeah.
there's nothing that's a 606 on page 22.
I'm looking here. Well, where is it show? Oh, capital improvement plan, here we go.
The table 2-11 is the projections that we.
Oh, okay, I know where it is. It's in the, it was in all the, reserves. Oh,
So the reserve number is how much we put into capital improvement every year,
Exactly, and it's 606.
but that's not how much is actually being planned to be spent. That's just how much we put in, how much the rate is gonna pay for capital improvement plan. It's not how much we actually have planned to spend, so it changes.
No, that's how much the rates are gonna put into.
Correct,
This 606
okay.
a year.
But the question was, why is there a dip in the fourth year? Why are the graphs dipping down? And it's because there's additional projects. So the rates are not offsetting all of the costs that are being spent on CIP. It's just what we're putting in there to offset the CIP.
Yeah, if you remember, we'll be putting in more in the CIP than just from the rate revenue. So remember, we added things from grants and interest income and some other stuff to help offset what we have to put in on the rate side. So we are aware that the actual CIP costs are gonna be higher, but we have that offset with what we, I know you asked for some, I asked for some, other people have asked for some, and that probably is what's calculated into the rate portion versus what we know we can see coming in with grants and projected water transfer that may have been built into that, so.
So the way we have the CIP budget is we have a whole section that is grant funded, like for stuff outside of the norm. The big things that we have to do, those are all part of our CIP grant funded. And none of that was calculated in here because obviously we're not gonna rate fund those. These are only the littler things, the rate funded, the priority 1, 2, 3 that you see in your budget every year that are calculated in here.
Mike, look at the last page, 77.
77?
I think that's what you're looking for.
No, it was in the. Let's see.
We're 77 different from mine.
Yeah, those are the same numbers that I just read out.
Yeah.
So,
You wanna hand him this and give it back? Depends on what copy,
This is,
what
yeah.
evolution of that
I
you've
know,
got.
this is the final report, I'm curious what you
So-
said.
Eric, ask a question. To move this thing forward, shouldn't we, or someone make a motion on whether,
There's no
There's
motion.
no
or whatever, this
That's a different-
cap,
that's a
not the
different
cap, but the
page
15, 10,
77.
10, 10, can we establish that that's,
That's a policy
Well, yeah.
decision. for
can
you
we,
guys.
can we at least get through that and then work on the scenarios and can we at least make,
Okay, what do you wanna get through?
well, the maximums? We agreed on the
Oh.
baseline.
So
data.
basically, are you gonna accept the report as it's written with the maximum rates? And then ultimately have the potential to set a different rate in the 12th meeting, is I think what he's asking.
Yes, Mr. Director Seaman?
I'm against this, accepting it because I brought up that 4.9 and that 5% every time, and it's been not looked at, to be able to, try to get rid of it since every meeting, every town hall, and oh, good, Frank's back. I have a question for him. That, you know, I brought it up every time and the only comment I ever get back is, well, if you want to cost more, we'll go and look at it a little harder. And now that we're looking at these numbers and the projections of money that our income, actually isn't as proportional, clearly proportional because, like I've been saying, is the large properties are the ones that are buying the irrigation. And they are generating some of the bigger, say, taxable revenue, property taxes, then that should be actually offsetting that 5% down. And it also should be looking at the fact we're gonna have an amount loss to GPUD because of people getting rid of like 50 inches of water. And those were never taken into account.
So to address both of those points, is, again, we can't foresee what potential income loss we're gonna have. It's all in the same ballpark of, we can't know what interest is gonna be. We can't know all that stuff. So we don't know what loss is gonna be until it happens. And so I wish I had a crystal ball and I wish I could say that this is what we're gonna lose.
No, but you're looking at a conservative approach. A conservative approach doesn't mean zick. It means you've looked at it, you've looked at the previous,
But you can't include any of it until it happens. I can't,
we have what I had, I have the list, I don't have it with me, of what we lost over the last
yeah,
one,
I gave it to you,
50 inches.
okay, but we also gained revenue. If you look at how, so tell the whole story, because we lost 50 inches, but we gained almost 200,000 in revenue.
Because we increased that, so we
But-
doubled them almost,
But, so there's a give and a take. Yes, we lost 50
but
inches.
that wasn't looked at in this.
We can't. You
Okay.
can't assume. I think an assumption is where we get ourselves into legal trouble.
Yeah, but to move this along, though, that's your case for no, and it's justified, I agree, but we need to move this along. What's your case for yes or no?
Well, my question is if the board decides we wanna change what's inside this cost of service study, regardless, what are the consequences of that?
You'd have to redo the whole study and it would have to start the whole process all over again. So we would basically be starting back at square one.
I think that, to me,
We just need to decide already.
that's not an option to redo this. What is an option is to have what the board thinks is a reasonable rate.
For the first year or the
Anytime, that's the board
Can I-
decision.
yeah,
Can I,
right.
this is Frank, can I set some things in context a little bit? Cause at the last board meeting, what I understood the direction for this special board meeting was notwithstanding the rate study, because that work's been done. It was really, and Director Thurmrow, I think, was the one that really drove this, was, okay, before we get to December 12th, acknowledging the fact that we can set the actual rates for fiscal year 2025 at less than the maximum for the first year, So let's assume that's 15% for one class of customer, okay? The request from Director Thornborough for this special meeting was to say, let's look at some scenarios where once we get to that rate setting hearing and assuming there's not a majority protest, and then we get to actually setting the rates for calendar for 2025, I want to be queued up as a board with what our options are. And I think that's the purpose for this meeting today, is looking at some alternative revenue sources and some potential tweaks to the model to figure out what potentially the board could set the rates at in actuality in 2025, notwithstanding that it adopts a rate study and a rate study gets, survives a majority protest on the 12th. And so I think, the most constructive and productive would be for the board to decide not to make a motion to approve anything in terms of the 2025 year rates, but to at least get one or two or maybe even three rate setting options, because it may have even more and better information on potential revenue sources by December 12th. And I think that's the exercise that we were going to go through, because, the rate study, changing that and doing all that now is, I think, we're pretty far along in that process, but I think that's why Director Thornborough said, okay, notwithstanding that, assuming the rate study is adopted, we may have some flexibility in going a little bit lower downward from the maximum. And so I think those are the scenarios the board wanted to look at today.
Yeah, and that's what I understood too.
Thank you.
Director Saunders.
Yeah, so I thought we were in agreement that it was, overall adopting the cost of service, study revenue that was presented in the study, and today we're gonna give those differences in like where we wanna put, okay, here's a percentage if we'd like Sandy to look at increasing the property tax this way, increasing the interest income this way, using the scenario and then crunching those numbers, and that'll give us where we're looking at. So that's what I wanted to hear, everybody's numbers, and then we could kind of say, all right, this is where I'd like to see the property tax, we get a consensus, interest income and whatever, and we have those numbers crunched, and we get something that we can all agree on, looking forward to the first
Would you
year.
like to start off, Director Saunders?
Well, yes, but I'd like to clarify something that Frank said and that I've heard, is that to make those adjustments, I mean, that's why we have, I think her name is Nancy here, is that we can make them right then and there. It doesn't involve redoing the whole rate study.
Correct, yeah.
And so we can
And
make these modifications.
Yeah, that's why I said I wanna hear everybody's thing, and then we could propose numbers to plug in, so they can bring it to us.
Somebody said.
And nothing has to be finalized today. Stuff could still be evolving up until December 12th.
Director Seaman.
And I'm still going back to the same scenario. We can make that hocus pocus decision, by moving this around, but we're still looking at putting that, and that's just what we learned today, is that 5% is still 5%, and we can't get rid of it. And that's what I wanna know, is how can we get rid of that? So that we are equally saying, okay, if we're gonna say it's 6 or 7% for water, it's 6 and 7% for water. Because we're also looking at, water customers are the 5/8 meter, the 1-inch meter, the whatever. That's proportional, and you're gonna do the same thing to the raw water customers, where you're having a certain charge and a certain percentage for a 1-inch, 2-inch, whatever, over a certain percentage. So each one of those is quote proportional, but we're not being given something to reduce that 5% and make it where if we're doing water at 6%, boom, done, not 6 and 11. And that's the problem I'm seeing on that. And then I do have a question for Frank.
Can I answer your question before you ask Frank a question? Can I answer, can I unpack your statement a little bit? So we actually did come up with some metrics to make that 5% less than it should have been. We realized what you said earlier was that it's not a requirement to have raw water, and so it could be cut off at any time, and that is something that we did take into account when we developed this rate study. We utilized something called a reliability factor. And if we did not utilize the reliability factor, the rates for irrigation would have gone up exponentially higher by utilizing the reliability factor of the 7, which is the 7 months that you're not receiving the water. And the treated water has to have that water because it's a health and human services issue. That was one of the metrics that we utilized to offset those rates quite considerably to make sure they kept in line with where they are today. Additionally, we also did the hydro revenue, which was something that we reallocated the hydro revenue mostly into the irrigation to also help keep those rates as low as possible. Now you can ask Frank your question, or you can respond to yours.
Are you there, Frank?
Yes.
So of all these, different town halls we had, et cetera, which ones are the ones we legally are bound by? So the documentation we have presented over 4 town halls is the only one that is our legal, we have to be giving them a hard document on December 12th. That make sense?
Well, the all of the hearings and everything we've had thus far is part of the overall administrative record that would be reviewed if there was any kind of issues. But the cost of service analysis is the document that underlies the maximum amounts we have for the 5-year horizon. So that's the document that's most crucial. That has not been adopted by this board yet. That wouldn't be adopted, if at all, until the December 12th public hearing.
Frank, sorry, can I jump in? I think the main thing here is the notice. It's the notice that got mailed out. Nick can probably fill me on the specific date, but the notice sets forth the maximum rates that can be adopted at the public hearing. So this board is bound by those at the high level. You can always adopt rates that are lower than what's in the Prop 218 notice, but that's what will bind you. In terms of the administrative record, what Frank was speaking about, if you're going to adopt the rates that were noticed or that are in that notice, then you need to have evidence supporting how you derive those rates. So that's really what, where the cost of service analysis becomes crucial. But Director, to answer your question specifically, you're bound by the Prop 218 notice that was mailed.
So the final report that was adopted September is our one that should be, that if Frank has to back it up, it's gotta be this one. And not all the renditions that we've had for the last 4 town halls.
It's not there. It's kind of a tricky question. It's all of the evidence. It's everything that
Well,
you
you paid the big bucks here, buddy.
It's everything that you, well, right, but there isn't a clear answer, is what I'm trying to say, is that it's everything that you're talking about, every meeting that you've had, every agenda, every staff report. It's the cost of service study, it's a Prop 218 notice, it's everything. So if there is any issue that needs, the rates need to be defended, all of that stuff comes in.
Thank you.
Director
So
Thornwell.
so what he's saying is that we're pretty much already locked into the 15 and 10, that's what we put on the notice. Well, we can't go lower.
You're locked into the sense of the cap, the maximum,
Right.
but not into where you actually
Right.
set the rate.
Right.
You're
So that's
locked into
okay.
15, 10, 10,
Right.
10, plus 5.
Or less. And what is this 5% that you keep
She
talking about?
can't, no, she's gonna have an aneurysm if yes, the same.
It's the irrigation proportionality. There's a section in
Remember
there.
that, the
that should-
4.9?
It shows where the irrigation was unproportional, was paying a lower rate. So basically, one of the arguments that from the original rate study was that irrigation was being subsidized by treated water, and the evidence was that it probably was being subsidized slightly to the tune of about 5%.
Remember when we had that revelation at irrigation committee?
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
Can you call on me? I don't know,
You're in charge.
yeah, go ahead, do you have a valid point to?
So is it too
consideration?
late to send out a new notice saying that
Way
you
too
decided
late,
to
way
change
too late.
Yeah.
the rates
Way
to
too
like
late.
5, 3, 3, 3, 3?
So we can change, everybody, I think we're all missing the fact that the notice is, all it is setting a maximum rate level. It is not setting the rates at those levels. at the
The
15.
people believing that it's like if this. so
Worst
they're gonna
case
send them a
scenario.
note, well,
Okay.
because it's unbelievably high.
Because that is what the analysis shows is required to run the district.
But if you send out a new one.
We can't.
People go, oh
Well-
my God, I could pay that.
Yeah,
Well, we're working on that.
that's,
Yeah.
Steve, you could be our advocate out in the community, we would love it, because this is why we have all these meetings. I mean, I would say to Director Thornborough's, what word I'm looking for, credit, we've had so much talk about this and so many additional pieces to the puzzle that we've tried to add so that everybody has as much information as possible. I think we've met about this 15 times, which is awesome and very transparent. And that is what we need the people to understand, is that all we're doing is adopting what the study says. And then ultimately the board can set the rates where the evidence actually lies. And so we don't know what all the evidence is because we can't go on assumptions until they actually come in.
We're gonna exceed
Maybe we're-
expectations.
Maybe we shouldn't rush into this then until the future is, the expectation.
But we have to because of where we are in our solvency state.
Thank you.
In what was mailed out to all the customers, the last thing in there and the biggest boldest print of everything was the very clear message, the board has the authority to charge a lesser amount based on potential revenues. So if somebody reads that whole thing, the last thing they read is that this is a cap, this isn't what the rate's gonna be. So I think that statement in there is something that we as a board were adamant about putting in there, is that this is a cost without potential revenue. We're talking about potential revenues.
We wouldn't
Which
be
we as a
here.
board, then we'll look at what the rate will actually be.
Yeah, that's why we're here. We wouldn't be here now if we weren't trying to lower that from that cap. Go ahead, Director Thornburg.
And this is the thing I've brought up over and over, as far as this cap goes, when you put in there, okay, this is a not to exceed.
Yeah.
How many times has a government agency says, oh, well, you know, this is what we're gonna do, like, for example, okay, we're gonna charge this bridge toll, but it's gonna go away in a year, okay, it never does. And so this is what I'm looking at it from my mindset of all the times government agencies, especially in the state, have screwed us, you know, by saying, yeah, this is what we're gonna do, and they don't do it. So that's why I'm looking at this whole thing as, okay, this is the maximum, okay, if I was a customer, not on the board, and I was a customer, I said, yeah, you can bet that's what they're gonna be charging. Okay, that's what my whole thing is about, is it seemed to me that there's all this talk about, well, we're gonna actually set the rates on December 12th. Okay, well, okay, what are we gonna set them to? What's it gonna be based on? And why, if it's gonna be less, then why couldn't we tell the customers, hey, this is what it was gonna be? I fully understand and agree that by doing it this way, we have some cushion, okay? And I agree with that, but, you know, I think to me, it's too much cushion.
So
To me, it is.
can I just be devil's advocate to you for 1 second?
You're devil's advocate to me every damn day.
Well, can I be it for five more?
Go right ahead.
Go ahead.
You are the person who gets to be that big bad government official.
Yeah, we're them.
You are them, so you get to, no, hold on, let me finish. You get to show how government actually should work by setting a lower rate that is much more appropriate for your customers. That is absolutely what is happening here.
We're gonna show good faith.
Except that I'm 1/5.
Yes, but you have been talking to the rest of them and potentially they all agree with you. You don't know.
Here's the thing. Couple months ago,
Yes.
I did this. Okay, a couple of months ago, when I first started going over it, and everybody was all on board and everything was fine.
I wouldn't say I was on
Sanjay
board
even
with it.
said, huh?
I wouldn't say I was on board, I agreed with some of them.
Okay, Sanjay even said, with my proposed rates, and he says, he ran the numbers, got Nancy on there, says, yeah, that'll work. Okay, but then we get into the discussion about the inflation rate. Okay, and it's like, all of a sudden, it's like, oh, well, you know, you're not an expert, you don't know what it's gonna be, and on and on and on, and then the whole damn thing just went out the window. Okay, that fast. I'm 1/5. So all I could do is say, here's what I think. And, you know, so what, you think the people are gonna say, oh, well, if Mike says it, that's what's gonna happen. No, that's not what's gonna happen. So, and so I was pretty I thought when we were going through these numbers and everybody, you know, okay, except you. When I say everybody, there wasn't, everybody seemed to be real positive about it. Okay, and so then, and like I said, Sanjay even said, yeah, that'll work. He plugged it in, said, yep, that'll work. And I said, perfect. But then all of a sudden, and now we're back at it again. So like the 5% to me is insane to use a 5% inflation annual rate. It was the last 5 years was 19%. That works out to 3.8% over those 5 years. We went through COVID for what, 2 or 3 fifths of that? You know, we went through COVID and it only went to 3.8. And so now just arbitrarily say, probably not arbitrarily, just say, oh, now it's 5. To me, that's nuts.
Yep, I agree, and what I want you to do is give your numbers, and then this way we can say, here are the numbers we wanna go in terms of the generators for property tax, interest income, inflation, and we could give those to put in, so we can have that
Okay.
projection.
Can I just jump in for 1 second? I just wanna, this is not for any of the argument or discussion. Sanjay has a hard stop at 5:30, so it's 4:35 right now, just so you're all aware that that is
You ready, Liz?
a hard stop.
This is the 3rd time he's done that.
So where are we at now? We've already accepted the rate study.
You would
For
accept
the
it, you would not
record
accept the rate
boroughs,
study.
What's, okay,
We
We're
need
waiting for
them.
We're
Director
looking at-
Thornborough's
Can we call it up, Liz?
okay, all right.
All right.
Wait, hold on a sec.
I was testing my mouse.
Your mouth
It's
is
working
good.
quite well.
Yes.
Yours not so much.
Use this. I'm gonna do one thing, and have you all set.
Yeah, let's make that as big as possible.
Okay. Okay.
Can we put these guys up on top or something? The ones on the right, so to put that more screen. I mean, like, is this horizontally an option? There you go. Okay. We go a little to the left. I'll use this one. Okay. All right, what we have is just kind of a recap of what we had last time. Is here we show where the revenues are. The investment interest has been pulled out right here at this point. So we have the way it's proportioned between treated and irrigation, and this whole thing is just treating irrigation because the ALT thing, there was changes made. I don't know what they were. I have to forget that. So anyway. Okay, so this is the way it's proportioned, and this much go in there treated as far as revenue, and the same thing with expenses. As far as the way it's split out. Now, on let's see, rate increase per year, okay. So we have the proposed increases right here is 15 and 10, 10, 10 all the way down. And I have in here right now, 15, 7, 7, 7, let's have to make an adjustment. Because of that inflation rate that was being suggested, and that just happened half an hour before I got here. So here's the projected inflation rate is 5%. It's put right there, and it's reflected all through the operating expenses to raise everything up every year. Okay, irrigation revenue. Irrigation revenue and expenses. Here's the proposed, comes to a total irrigation sales, 437 the first year. And then this is where I've got 15, and they have 15 and 10, 10, 10, I had 15 and 7s down there. Again, that's because of the 5% inflation. So anyway, the bottom line is that you come down here to where, and the CIP is, it was a 4.9 before, I changed it to 4.2 because that's what I found in the rate study, and that reflects the 606 CIP, plus the, what was the other thing in there? Oh, the increase of operating reserves. because every time it goes up, we have to increase the operating reserves. Every time our expenses go up. Okay, so the bottom line is, so I changed that because the math actually came out to 4.215 million, not 4.9, so that's what I have in there. So even with the 5%, but this does have that 350,000 in there every year for the investment interest. We can change that if we need to do that, but even with the 5%, the bottom line is that our target, CIP and reserves, is 4.2, with the proposed rates of the 15, 10, 10, 10, we'll be taking it 5.9 over the 5 years, which gives us, over the CIP target of 1.6, almost $1.7 million over the 5 years. And that again is with the 15 and the 10, 10, 10 all the way down. If we go, this over target is 307 on my figures, which are back to the, what was it? I forget now. It was 15, 7, 15 and 7's down, so it's not too much of a difference. We're only gonna be 307,000 after the 5 years over the target. So if this 5% inflation rate was less, then we can make significant changes in these percentages over here. And so it, you know, it does take this, oh, I forgot, I gotta have Liz. Liz, can you put in 3.8, please? There we go. Okay, so if we do that, then that's gonna show, over the 5 years, we'll have collected 2.8 million more than we needed. And with the adjustments that I made, we're still gonna be almost 1.5 million over what we needed. So that would allow us to change these amounts here to, I think it was 13 initially percent and then 5% each year later. And I can do that if you all want to see that. So what I did was I said, okay, well, you know, what's the minimum that we need to cover all of our actual cost of service? What's the minimal percentage increases that we need? And so that's what I did. So we're back to where we were the last time I did this, to where what is a reasonable annual inflation rate? I mean, to me, this is my thinking, I'm not an expert in this, but I mean, 5 is insane to me. Like I said, it worked out in the last 5 years, 3.8%, and that was through COVID. So it's like, you know, to me, I would think it'd be at least a little bit less, but I'm fine with leaving it at 3.8 if that makes, you know, people happy, but I'm not happy with 5 one bit. I'm also not, like I said before, this does have that 350,000 interest, which we can go and change that easily enough to, you know, whatever we want. I think that, I mean, we already got 400,000 this year. We just saw in what was it, last board meeting. We've already got 400,000. Yeah.
So you're running it as 15%. You're not saying, okay, if we don't do 15% and we do 6 or 10%, what that all changes the numbers to.
Yeah, I did. Here's my numbers right here. Here's the ones that's proposed, 15 and 10.
It's 15 again.
I had to go up to 15 because of the 5%, the 5% inflation rate. You know, I had it at 13. I can do irrigation and this one at 13 with 5 for each of the additional years, and that puts us right in where I think we need to be. But, you know, that 5%, I think that's unrealistic. This also reflects the $100,000 a year increase is built into this for property tax revenue.
Hey, Lufty, I think they're frozen.
Yeah, it froze for just a minute and seems like it's working again.
No, I don't think so, because the board's not there, it's just us. And the recording stopped.
Yeah, they dropped off.
Okay.
So I guess it's a bathroom break.
I think so.
Did the recording stop? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, I said the recording stopped.
Mhm.
Hey, Nick, is Nick there?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, I thought Nick had called in also on his phone. Okay.
No, it's you, Nancy, Bob, Frank, Renee, and then a 530-330-0733 number.
Frank, did you let Nick know we're all kicked out?
Well, we're not kicked out. We're in. They're kicked out.
Yeah, I did. He said they're trying to fix it right now.
Okay.
Just received a notice that recording has started again.
Not for the amount of money we're paying though. It
Seems
seems to be,
life on the divide, you need
it seems to be frequently.
Alright, sorry, everybody, we had a bit of an internet drop, so, we'll get everything loaded and resume where we were.
Now I'll ask the question. So
Well, I think, however you guys wanna handle it, but Director Stovall's in the middle of a statement, so I just wanna make sure,
And then I have my hand raised.
so however you wanna handle it.
No, I want to ask a question right here. Are we not going over the water rate scenarios, but we're going back over the rate study, changing that?
I
That
think,
was, that was kind of my question too, is are we, you got that 15% you're tagging into, which is what the rate study says. I thought what we were looking at was dropping down the 15%.
That's what we are looking at. Well, the
It
15,
wasn't on that.
the 15%, yeah. Well, so that comes back up there.
We keep moving forward and moving back.
There we go. Okay, see over here, it's 15%, 10, 10, 10. That's what is proposed, okay? And so these are the ones that I'm saying, we got some room here we can adjust. in my
You're
opinion.
still doing 15 the first year.
Right now, because that, I had to change that when this was at 5. Because if we're gonna live with that 5%, that projected annual inflation rate of 5%, we're gonna be locked into that, then, you know, we can't go any lower than this. That's what I'm saying, is that it's all hinging on that 5%, which to me is extremely unreasonable. But even with that 5%, we will have to do the 15%, but we can do 7, you know, after that.
That's changing the rate study.
No, it's
No,
not.
it's not changing anything.
I think he's still saying that he wants to propose lower rates. He's just utilizing this metrics of this to basically do the same thing that we're saying in our presentation with additional revenues and stuff. So he's having additional,
Firepower?
changes to the numbers, but it won't change the study. It'll change the way the rate setting happens at the final part.
Right.
So I wanted to confirm, given your second scenario, so you would be in favor of having the equivalent of a 13% across the board increase as it's ratioed across for the first year, and then the potential of 5 after that, but accept the rate study, but you're coming at,
Right,
I just wanted to confirm that, so,
right.
all right.
You said 13? or
13?
What do you
13
see?
is what he came up with
That's the numbers he ran.
in the second
What
scenario.
page are you on?
He went in there and actually
All right, hold on,
Had
let me do this,
adjusted.
Okay, we're now, if we put this at 3.8
I'm looking back there.
instead of 5, yeah, just keep looking up there. Okay, then we go up here to treated,
And then that's where you got the 13.
that's where I got the 13, was at this.
What says 15?
Okay, Liz, 13, please. 5. 5. 5. 5. Okay, now we go down here to irrigation and do the same thing, so, 13
That's more like
and 5.
18.
So can I just, give one piece of information? When you set the
Okay.
rates in December, the actual rates, not the, accepting the report, you're only setting the rates for 1 year. So you are not setting the rates for years 2 through 5. You are only setting the first year's rates, and then you will come back later and set year 2. Every year you'll come back and set.
So there's no point in
Right.
doing that whole scenario. And that 13 is really 18
Per year.
the first year for irrigation.
No, this,
Yes.
this is going to, and that was a stipulation that I was gonna make on here, is that 13 for irrigation is 13% for irrigation, period. That's how much the rates are gonna go up.
You can't do that though.
Do it
That's
though.
against 218. You're breaking 218.
That was the whole
That's
point.
a legal
What I
issue.
said.
Okay, so you can knock it down from,
That water has to be water.
Well, if you set the rates at 5% across the board, you have to then take the proportional agreement throughout the different rate classes. Everything is gonna have to be recalculated.
right,
And for
Right.
irrigation is easy to see, so if it's at 5%, it will be plus 5%. That's 10%, but then you'll have to recalculate all of the 1-inch meters, the 2-inch meters, everything's got to be recalculated.
Well, isn't that what Nancy has on hers?
Yes,
where
she
can
has the
type it
ability.
in,
Yep.
Say, I want it, let's do 5% or 6% or 10% and watch the numbers, and are we falling
I see,
within
yeah.
the zone or within the rate or not within the rate? Because this isn't gonna work. I know you did a lot of work, but I'm sorry.
Director Saunders?
well, it is, I'm not done yet.
Well.
Let me point this out, okay?
Mhm.
This is what I'm looking at. This is my concern. Is that the proposed rates, we are taking from our customers 2.8 million more after 5 years than what was needed. And with my alternate rates, that brings it down to just 227,000, which gives us a little bit of a cushion.
Director Saunders?
So we have the ability to change this every year. Your first year scenario proposes a 13% increase, and the percent increase we got today is 6%, which is half of that. So I think we should go with looking at the 6% as year 1,
Well, I would say, be very cautious about 6% because that
Well,
is.
whatever numbers are
everything.
presented, yes.
Well, that's, everything happens perfectly, so you may wanna err on the side of a little bit more than that. And then ultimately, we're just trying to show you where things could
How
come.
about we get to her, the Sanjay's
Can I
model up
finish
there and
my,
start doing it?
Statements, as everybody keeps, wanting to talk. We talked about numbers we wanted to put in. We talked about the property tax generator because that was, gonna increase, and we said that number was what, 2.4%? What was the number for property tax?
So roughly, I came up with 2.4 over the 5 years.
Well, if we can see what the property tax is, if we can
And I
add
came
that
up
to
with-
the water plan scenario and the interest income, we said we wanted to raise the interest income as well up. What was the number we said on that? It was like 2.4. It's still conservative. Well, we can't really go 4 for each of the years, but
No.
We're locked in for 4. We got.
not for everything though.
Well, what's the average of what our locked in is? He said 1/4 of it's like locked in at less than 4.
Right.
So
we
what,
gotta-
3.5? 3.75? Right now, because the Fed lowered the shorter term rates, the
I know,
higher
but
end is
what are we
going up.
locked in for 5 years is what I'm saying. Are we at 6 months? Which ones are 5 year? You don't have.
Everything matures every 6 months, so.
Yeah, so we
We
don't
would,
have a
it
5.
would change, the average would change every 6 months. I can get you a kind of a general average, but I mean, it would be.
Can't we do it for that 1 year at 4%?
We absolutely could.
And
That's
then
what
we
I said
can
earlier.
estimate the
Absolutely.
rest of it.
No,
Yeah, so that was-
no, that's what they're, it's laddered, so there's maturing every 6 months.
I am
but-
aware, but
but
we're
on 4
looking for the first year, so we want a
First year.
number we wanna put in for the first year.
So the conservative number is 4%.
It's already in there.
Right, so and I think 4% was the first year.
But our average maturity is, understand this, it's 4 to 5 years, and they
We're
mature.
looking at the rates for year 1.
You only need to set the rates for 1 year
So we're
though.
looking at this year. Next
So-
year, we
so-
can put in that number.
You don't need to worry about years.
When you
2.
first, what I'm, what? all
No,
right,
no,
like
you're
this-
not wrong. Nobody's saying you're wrong, but all the.
No, but they're saying, what about years 1 through 5? What I'm saying is, this gentleman gets to speak on. I wanna say is when we first bought all these treasuries and CDs, they were for 5 years and 6 years, and that's locked in, but when we laddered them at 2, 3, 4, 5, they're maturing every 6 months, but they're still guaranteed for this 4 years.
Yes, but I think what they're trying to say
All right.
is we can add that in for the 5 years, but it's inconsequential.
All right, fine. It's still 4% anyway.
So yeah, but by the year 5, we will probably not be at 4% anymore. Even with the laddering, because we're still seeing reductions. Every time we go buy one, they're taking a few points off to buy the next set of.
Yeah, but you seen what's happened in the last 4 weeks? It's gone back up again.
Yeah. What happens on January 20th?
I'm just telling you, it went down, it went down and it's back up. It's still
Can
at
we get
over
back to
4.
the meeting?
From the finance committee potential perspective, I think it is reasonable that the cost of service should align with the budget year. And I think that's probably something that should be on a future board meeting to discuss. I don't know if we can
So
even.
you can
discuss
set
it.
the rates at any time during the year. You can set a different rate every month. You can meet every month and set a different rate. So
Given
if
that,
you wanna come back in like, say, May, and when we do the budget, we can set new rates for July 1st. If you
because
want.
I would be in favor of looking at setting a rate for 6 months.
That's
Looking
totally within
at
your options.
what happens in 6 months and then come back and.
Can we get the scenario up on the board so we can make numbers change and see what, if we're gonna have income, don't have income, where our lines are gonna be close?
Nancy's.
I think that, Mike hit on a big thing that I think is solve everybody's problem is it already shows in the rate study that for 2025, the interest income is $350,000, which is right where we think it should be. So I think what Mike is saying, and I agree with, is that even though in year 2, it goes significantly down, it doesn't matter because we're not looking at year 2 right now.
Right.
Cause in year 2, they got it all the way down to 49,000. So if we can agree on, okay, the 350 is already in there for year 1. for starting this January. That's already in there, so.
So we have to be really careful with that 2.4 number that's in there then. Unless I'm mistaken. Sanjay, do you wanna pull up your model and we can start plugging a few numbers in maybe?
Well, the 2.4 is gonna affect with January 1st.
It should not. Because it's already in there for 2025, that's 350. Then it's already over the 2.4.
Right. Right. And we've already got it.
Are you guys able to hear us? I know that we're having maybe some internet issues.
Yeah, we can hear you. I thought you're still talking, so that's why I didn't want to interrupt.
Oh, I was just wondering if maybe Nancy could pull up her the actual model so we could drive it a little bit and sort of.
Yeah, so let's go, so let's change the interest earning, first. So what's the interest that the board would like?
So just keep it where it is now, because I think in 2025, it's already at 350,000.
No, this is, that's not how the model works. So let me just run
We
this.
asked to have
So
it
what's
with
the
4%.
interest that you would
4%,
like to
4%.
have in future earnings? Tell me that number, please.
4%.
4%, let's put 4% each year.
No, just the first year.
No,
Okay, first year, 4% first year. And what's the next year?
You can probably do 4%, and then I would say do 3% for the rest of the years, if that's okay with the board.
That's being very conservative. I'm okay with it.
Okay, then are we doing the operating offset?
So that's the
Solar.
the solar. Are we gonna, you guys wanna
Yeah,
continue with the solar?
Yes.
Okay, put that on true.
Mhm.
And then do we wanna
would
do the
affect
CIP?
later years. It wouldn't affect the first
Yes.
year.
Okay, let's do that. And then property tax I heard too. Let's increase the property tax. What are we assuming the property tax will increase by?
I'd say 2 is conservative.
Two
I think
percent?
it went up by,
2.5 is.
it went up by about 100,000, so it's about 1%.
Doesn't it go proportionate to what the, what do you call Prop 13?
No,
It's like 1% a year?
It's about 1%.
More than that.
it depends.
I looked at
Right.
the real income.
Actually, went about
property
0.5%,
tax
I'm
over the
sorry.
last 6 years.
It went up about 0.5% last year, from 2 million to just shy of 2.1 million.
If property taxes go up that cap of 1% a year, how could our portion be more than 1% a year?
That's,
We're baked into that year, so we're baked into like 70 something, and
Yeah,
then they give us
because,
a percentage above it, so.
new property sales.
Yeah, if we're growing, so, but 2.2%
But
is still
basically, I
on
looked
the
at
high
what
side.
Property
the
tax is
actual-
increasing
Yeah,
by
I think
2%,
0.5%.
Nancy?
I wouldn't go more than 0.5%,
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
because that's.
No, I
we
put
have
it
about-
at 1%. I think that's what I heard.
Is the direction we received 1%?
One or half,
half.
I would say half.
Can we change it to 0.5%?
We can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
We have a
0.5%.
kind of consensus.
How
of
much
that.
money is 0.5%?
That's 100,000. Okay, basically, because we got, if it's 100,000 every year, that's 0.5%.
Okay.
That looks.
Make that an
good.
input, Nancy.
Okay.
I suspect we may be changing that number.
Yeah,
What
because
other? Go ahead.
wait, at 0.5%, it's going up 100,000. Because I
Yes.
put it at 1% right now, and it's going up 20,000 or 21,000.
This must
So
be
that's
off.
how the math shakes out.
Give it 0.5% every year of 2 million.
2.1, yeah.
Should be
They might only
100,000.
have half.
Am I doing my math wrong?
No, that would be 100,000, 5% or 1%. So 5% is 100,000 on 2 million. Yeah.
Yeah, so it should, oh no, it's 5%, sorry. I apologize, it's 5%. If it went up to 200, if it went to 2.1, it's 5%. So I made a mistake.
So what percent are we using? I'm sorry.
So it'd be 5%.
5%.
We're saying property tax increases 5% a year?
That's.
That's way too much.
I thought you said 0.5%. I said 2.
Which would be 20 grand, right?
So you can do whatever you like.
You
1%.
wanna use 5% as the property tax increase.
Make it come out to 100,000,
Oh, boy.
whatever that is.
No,
I think that's high.
that's the ends justify.
Okay, I'm just letting you, I mean, in our report, we're gonna say that these are the policies that the board gave us, because they're, you know, if you're saying your property tax, Malibu property tax increases by 5%. I
Yeah, I think
work
that's
for-
July.
So, but if you wanna say that, that's fine, but I'm just gonna, you know, that's some input that the board gave. us.
Every year for the past several years. So what percentage is that?
No, it's
5%.
Remember, the last 5 years may not be representative of the future because of COVID and people leaving the cities and moving to rural areas.
well, if it's been 5% for the last several years, and we're only doing 1 year at a time, maybe we could do 5%.
I would say do something a little more conservative, like maybe 2%.
I would agree.
All right. And that would be.
That's more than what's
40,000.
showing now.
Yeah.
That would be
All right.
40 grand.
All right, so 2% is a good consensus.
2.5.
Scott,
So,
So
and
Sanjay,
I'm sorry.
Go with,
Scott,
2%.
Legal counsel here again. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the way the discussion is going. There needs to be an evidence-based reason for the numbers that you're giving. So I'm hearing policy. I need the evidence. That has to be the basis of the numbers.
So we've seen $100,000 increase per year in our property tax revenues, and we're only gonna go at 40,000 instead of the full 100,000. You have the numbers, Director Stover?
I have
Yeah,
them right here.
the actual, property tax revenue in FY 18-19 was 1,577,792.
Round up.
5 years later, it was 10,456. Those are actual numbers so that we can base our rates in. I did the math and it looked like about 2.4% increase average over 5 years.
And there wasn't a one-time anomaly, that was pretty kind of,
It's pretty consistent.
okay.
So I would stay with 2. I wouldn't go any higher than 2.
I agree.
Lutfi, are you okay with that justification? We can look at our revenue budget and see
Yeah,
that
yeah.
it's.
That's
It's
what you're looking for.
whatever you guys want to do, but I mean, that's the evidence that we need. So I need
Yes.
that's the information that needs to be.
Okay.
Are there any other markers that we want to turn?
So that, now you're saying we're only gonna get 40,000.
it's just.
Because I think we're saying we don't know. We're saying it,
All right.
It's less-
Whatever you guys wanna do. All right.
so what other knobs do you guys want to turn?
So we went from 1% on interest earnings to 4.
Yes,
And we went from, I believe, nothing to 2% on
Taxes.
correct.
taxes.
So what other knobs do we want to turn?
Do we have
I think
the
it's just a
solar?
time.
Yeah.
Solar's already included.
And I think that's it, because we agreed upon that we check the actual inflation every year, so.
So,
Excuse me, for the CIP, was that the other one?
yeah, we have that one included already. So Nancy and Sanjay, can you maybe rag out what percentage numbers we can potentially utilize for rates with these new
Do you
numbers?
wanna keep the first year or no?
Just the first.
15% or you wanna lower that?
We're gonna only talk about the first year right now.
But he wants to know if we keep that at 15%.
Yeah,
or
we'll
if we
keep,
lower that.
we're keeping that because we're not gonna change the study, yeah. so.
We're not changing,
No,
yeah,
we're
we're
not
not
changing
changing
the
the
We're
study.
looking for,
We can still set a lower rate than 15% though.
yes, we're trying to,
No, I'd keep it at 15%.
So, let's do like 3%, Nancy.
No,
We're
we're,
gonna start probably.
Okay, so let's change the 15% to 10%.
So that's what we're trying to figure out now. This is where you want to actually start the
this is
rate.
the
Okay.
hocus pocus, what we can,
Let's make the 10%, 7%,
sure, started at something.
make it 5% to 7%.
Do we have to go past year 1?
Let's
helps.
make it 7%, 6%.
Yeah, the-
No,
Okay, there we go.
I would
This is
keep
what we would
that
recommend.
15%, you said it was 13, so I mean, I wouldn't go lower than 13.
That means you're gonna have
Not the-
13% to
That
start.
is the cap, yeah.
We're not talking about the cap. What we're asking to start now, we know what the cap is. The cap's 15 as per
This is
the
actual rate setting.
Yeah,
actual rate state. What we're looking at now is looking at numbers to see if we agree to not do 15.
right,
That we're wanting
Yeah.
to do, that's what we're talking about here.
right.
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't change anything, because with it before, I think it was at 6%, and this will probably be lower than 6, so seeing what comes
Yeah,
up with.
yeah,
from there,
yeah. No, what Donna said, that's what, even though it sounds like we're all talking about different things, what Donna says is what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
Okay, so what is that?
6% and then 3 for the 4 out years.
Sure.
What's the 6% refer to?
The 6 would be, that would be the actual rate setting. You'd
No,
actually set the
don't
rate.
say study. This will be the actual rates for setting.
That's what I said.
He said.
That's exactly what I said.
He
I
said,
thought you said study.
Rate setting.
Oh,
So it's,
setting, sorry.
it's 15, but we're gonna aim for 6.
You're gonna aim, I think you should go a little bit higher than 6. I
Can
think
we
you
see
should,
what the numbers come up to?
that's what it is right there, though.
Okay,
He doesn't, we don't have the number, like the dollars, because he has to go back in and calculate all those. This is just where the actual financial plan can come in. Does that make sense? So he would have to come in and actually calculate all the rates for each different, it's a bunch of knobs that he has to turn on his back end.
So if I could give, like some homework for us to do is to look at somewhere between 6 and 8% for year one and.
I would say up to 10%, if you want staff recommendation. We may not, because a lot of these things, we don't know when they come in and when they start to happen yet. So there's a potential for them all to happen. Obviously, the interest is good. The CIP one is a potential so far, so we don't know exactly when that number could hit. And then the solar offsetting, I know that's not being reflected in year one, but it does affect the financial plan moving forward down the line.
can we talk about what the 6%
Yeah.
actually came out and stop all the other stuff? And then see if we wanna raise it up, if we need to raise it up higher, if we can make 6% work, or if we can do more.
So that's what I'm saying is 6% works if everything
That's
else,
what we wanna see.
but it does work. That's what he's trying to say. It works if everything else happens the way we're saying it happens. So with the extra interest income, I'm missing you and I'm trying to understand because it does work is what you're asking. But it only works if every scenario that we're saying happens. And these are some potential scenarios that may or may not happen. Does that help answer the question?
No,
I got a question. Why are we picking a percentage? Why aren't we just plugging in the numbers we just determined?
Oh, we did.
That's what we did.
they did, but now we need to see, okay, let's look at the charts. I'm assuming when we have these numbers, that the charts will start showing where we're at financially, whether we're solvent or.
Yeah, so that's these graphs right here. This right here.
That's what we wanna talk about
Right here.
now.
This is whether you're solvent or not. This graph right here. So as long as this dotted line stays within the graph, you're good. And on this green one, as long as this stays below the top, you're good. That's the numbers that's why this works. This scenario works. Nancy, can you change year one to 2% just for grins?
To see the dots.
You'll see the dotted line go way above.
So based on these inputs Director Saunders gave and the rest of us, it's gonna change that percentage and we're gonna see it right there.
Do you see how it goes below?
Oh.
And that's where it shows that we're not okay. So
Right.
that's when we become not solvent.
And that's what we came in here to look
Yeah,
at, to
yeah.
put numbers in there, see roughly where we have our limits of up and down, high and low. And then so we have a little bit stronger idea of how we can approach the 12.
So if he's saying, if we get the 350 of extra interest income, then we could go to 6. And Nancy, can you just take the first year of the interest income and make it 0 so that they can see if it doesn't work? No, not that one, sorry, the 350, I apologize. So do you see how if we don't have that, so now can you go take it away or leave it away and then do the percentages on the top and do like 10%?
Yeah, I see it moving, yeah. I was just surprised.
It looks like the first and second year were still good.
So. Yeah, but I have to look at the whole financial plan.
I don't see how.
I can see the first, second, and third year were still okay.
Yeah, so at 10, 6, and 6, we're good. So if you don't have that interest, then you do 10%,
I'm gonna.
And then we can reassess in year 2.
Look at somewhere.
Is what they're gonna say.
Probably.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, I understand once you start crunching them, I
Yeah,
can see, cause I'm looking at those bars and I can see where, we're kinda close.
Yeah.
We kinda need to come up a little bit.
The reason you wanna run the whole 5 years is because you wanna make sure that in the future, you're not running into any of the debt
But
coverage
see,
issues.
we know we're gonna next year reevaluate this, and the year after, we're gonna reevaluate this.
Totally understand.
Because we have, what is it, the 15, whatever,
At 15 and 4/10s a potential
Yeah.
maximum,
but as we can see, we don't need 15,
correct?
10, 10, 10.
We're just.
As we're looking at right now,
It's hard for them to break that in.
We apologize.
Lord have mercy. So even if we don't have the interest in there, we're
Yeah.
still, year one, if we,
Do 10%, you're good.
well, we're good at 4 or 5%.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend you going super low because of the future, years, because it's still,
We're not talking future. I'm looking at the first year.
yeah, but you don't wanna go at the minimum in that first year if you have out years that are not solvent. That's what you have to be careful with.
Here's, Nicholas, here's what's important. I think this will answer it. If you don't, in the early years, build in that increase, that's a base you'll never get back. If you don't build it in the first year, you'll never get it back.
Yeah, because we're compounding the
Yeah.
costs over all the years.
You may have,
And
That's
we're
why it's
ended up
going down.
getting more than what we actually have asked for in the start.
you may actually have to do a 15% increase in like year 3 to compensate.
Yeah.
Is what I think is the avoidance you wanna do.
Yeah, and that's what happened in the last one.
Yeah.
They overinflated it and then found out they didn't need to do any of that.
Yeah.
But can you actually do that? In
You-
year 3?
So that's why it's a
That's 10.
cap.
That's
So,
a 10.
it's the percentages go away once you set the caps.
So,
Then you set the maximum rate, and so it's not based on a percentage, it would be based for the proportionality portion of it. But you could only go up to that top level rate, so it actually is a rate that the customer will pay, and that's, kind of the next piece to this puzzle is what does 10% actually mean to a rate? So it's gonna be obviously 5% less in the whole metric of it. So every year, Sanjay or whoever is gonna, when you set the rate, it's gonna have to calculate what the actual customer rate that we submit to the customers are. Does that make sense? Am I missing you there?
So you don't,
I'm still, really, I'd like to see my thing back up there, so I'd like to.
Yeah, but if
this
it's,
makes more sense.
you can plug your numbers into this and it's still the same. It would still be the same.
Cause I mean, realistically, if you would put it at, we're looking at, we can top it at 10, at 15, 10, 10, 10.
Mhm.
But, so we start, and I'm still, more apt to try to do, like, say, 6 across the board and see how that runs. And realistically, we can cut costs. We don't have to do all these budgetary items that are projected out if we can't afford them. So why would we put ourselves in financial red dot if we can't afford to do that? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. We keep the money coming in. We're a not-for-profit organization. If we can't afford to do something, what has been going on before we got here? You just keep pushing these projects off. Not saying I want to do that, but
We've been here for 6 years, so we can't go backwards anymore.
I would caution you,
we've gone more forward in the last
Yeah, I
2
would say that.
than we have in the last.
I would
Yeah.
severely caution you from doing that, because there are
I'm
things.
not
but
okay with that.
3 more
I'm saying-
minutes of Sanjay.
yeah, Sanjay time, 10 more minutes, 12. Saunders?
So I think we have, good numbers from, my T scenarios and this scenarios, which gives us a range to look at from 6% to 13%. And each one does show it will reduce the increase down from about 10% to 5 or 7. So it looks like as we move out.
For subsequent years.
Yeah, for subsequent years, we're not gonna be near the 10%. So we don't have to come up with a number now. We can come up with what we wanna bring forward at the next meeting, because we're not gonna get a consensus here. 'Cause I think we should, look at those numbers and then bring them to our December meeting.
And point of clarification, it went down from 15 to 13, what was the initial step down?
That was,
Just the interest
that
one?
was just the interest alone. So then when we add in the
Okay.
factors of solar and
Right,
CIP and stuff, it shows we can go down to at least 6.
Just for
the
that,
first year.
okay.
And I just want to clarify that 5% on irrigation is for 1 year only.
Ask your question one more time. What is for 1 year only?
The 5%,
Yes, it's only
Above
I believe it's only
top.
for the first year, yes.
we need to know, is it for 1 year or is it for more than 1 year?
Sanjay, once we do the 5% proportionality adjustment, is it just a flat percentage after that?
Correct.
So there you go.
That's good to know, yeah.
First year.
Put it in writing.
It's in the plan.
Doesn't say anywhere in that.
Okay, Mr. Dowd.
Can I just remind you guys, me and Bob are the only ones that are in here getting all this information and kind of understand it, I guess. I can't, but the rest of the ratepayers, they're not here. They have no idea what's going on. And you already sent out the paperwork saying 15%, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, and they're in shock. So they could be sending in the no votes and you might not be getting anything. I mean,
We can't send
you
anything
gotta
else
sweeten
out.
the pot a little bit and bring it down to like what Mike was proposing.
can't.
Yeah.
But we can't send anything else out. Nothing else that we sent, I mean, we can send out whatever, you know, but nothing is set in stone, nothing is a consensus. We can't actually set the rates until we set the rates.
Yeah, but see, they don't know that.
It says
Nobody
that,
knows
if they read it, it says it in there.
And
It
the-
says
and the-
that those
Yeah,
are,
But
Yeah,
that,
they've
we're giving
seen
them the
15.
worst case scenario, so it's only gonna be better.
Yeah,
They don't see
yeah, but
that.
they don't see that.
But
They're seeing shock.
I'd rather be surprised on the
You
upside.
could be our Facebook advocate and let them know that that's
What
the
happened to
maximum,
you?
and that's
Read,
not
read the
where
big print.
we're not trying to go.
Go ahead, Director Seaman.
So the other question is, what happens with, Overland Lake Trails?
none of the changes. You're asking about the percentages?
Yeah,
It's,
I mean, we're looking at the maximum, what is it, 90% increase the first year?
so nothing really, there's no other additional revenues that are coming into that district at this time. So there's really not anything we can do. There's nothing really we can do to
You
change
tell
it.
me that we cannot, adjust those rates at all.
Without breaking the law, no.
We who?
The
Ratepayer?
board,
I mean, you could set the rates where you
because
want.
they're at 90% first year.
So you could set the rates lower, just like you can here, but they would be it would still be insolvency.
I don't wanna say this.
You can say whatever you
No,
want.
I'm not gonna say it.
No, because
They can
I'm,
protest it, there's 1,085 of them.
I understand, but I'm just saying, we should be looking at all, I mean, I'm assuming we're looking at all the rates, not just water. Water,
So like I
right?
said,
I mean,
Yeah,
but all we're
I-
talking about is water.
And I agree, and I said, moving forward, we're really gonna look at trying to get the wastewater grants or any appropriations that go to the wastewater side, and that'll help reduce those rates. But
Yeah,
right
but
now,
that first one is 90%.
we don't have any revenue coming in to offset it. That was the problem. But we are I will definitely work with grants committee and anything anybody sees to help offset wastewater that's the next thing we wanna try and do.
Okay, so where we are now is, we got 6 more minutes of Sanjay.
if there's any other public
Any other
comment.
comment, Bob? None, I don't see any. Any other board comment? No.
I just, in conclusion, we're looking at, somewhere 10, 11, 12, 13%.
So,
Is a avenue, a arena that we're looking at?
I'm not
Okay.
watching the way those numbers work and where those charts were at.
What are you looking
First
at?
year, I'm looking at 6 to 8%.
Okay.
And if you look at it, that's without the interest income coming in. So if we have something happen between now and the 12th, game on, we can drop it, have it there. Yes?
I think that does have that, for the first year, has a $350,000 interest income.
we removed it.
They removed it.
They took it out for the first year?
Yeah.
The extra 350.
What do you mean
So-
they
And if you
extra?
look at it, even without it, we're still
The
solvent.
number we can talk about.
The interest income,
The extra interest income is what we had it added in there.
what extra interest?
You mean years 2 through 5?
But the first time around, it was in there, so.
Right, it was 350 was in there, so you took
That's
the
still in there.
350 out.
They were
Mike,
just-
I can't say this in open session.
It was, look,
Can you tap him on the side, Mitch, and explain to him what it is? I can't.
but what I'm trying to say is, with that, at 6%, without that 350, the first year
We
we
added
were still
extra
in the
to make
solvency.
it lower.
We were fine. So
Oh,
by adding that that back in at 6%, we're high. It was a lot higher number, or a lot higher bar graph.
Okay.
And that's why I'm looking at this, I'm watching that bar graph, as the numbers changed, that bar graph where that little dotted line was higher than that little dotted line, which means we were making more money than we are spending.
And then with valid point, and with staff, they're saying that if that's in the perfect world on there, but he's saying we don't know when these expenses are gonna occur, income's gonna come in, so we have to,
But that's what that's
yeah,
doing too.
yeah.
But you also don't wanna have rate shock in year 3 or 4 of this, so you wanna make sure that you. The reason why they do the 15 in the front is because you get rate shock out of the way, and then you move forward from there.
Yeah, the lower it is up front the first year, the likelihood is that the outer years may not go down much or if at all, and may go up. So,
I don't mean to cut you
No.
off, maybe have Sheree ask her
Sheree?
question, just in case it's for Sanjay.
okay, Sanjay, go ahead, Sheree.
I didn't know Sheree was there.
Can you hear me? It would be helpful, it would have been helpful if we had a copy of that presentation put on the website and not after the meeting as stated by the general manager in an email. Thank you.
We received the presentation about 10 minutes before the meeting because it was still evolving. And it will be posted on the website after the meeting with everything that you need to see. Plus, this meeting has been recorded and it will be on YouTube as well as the district's website in perpetuity.
I'm grateful that we, fortunate
It
that we
still
did have
doesn't
this.
help, doesn't help somebody when they're in the middle of the meeting trying to follow it and you had, what's it take, 5 minutes to post it?
Well, we didn't get it before we walked in here either, so
Yeah,
that didn't make me very happy.
and I'm glad we were at the last minute asked for the special meeting. We wouldn't be here right now. We'd be here on next month's meeting, talking about it. So we got more than we planned, but less than maybe could have been. So thanks, Sheree. You done? Okay. At this point then, so staff direction, you have that. Do I have a motion
There's no motion.
There's
to
no
adjourn the
motion.
meeting, maybe?
No,
Yeah, that's the next thing we're doing.
no, it isn't. It's,
What's next?
isn't it if you have anything for the
This
next
is just a
meeting?
special meeting.
So you don't do that?
Not typically, unless you have something you wanna bring up.
Yes.
No. Okay.
I was supposed to receive, the link to the EIR and the date it was due.
Oh, I apologize. I'll send it to you. I'm sorry.
I'd also like in the January meeting, a list of all the associations we voted on that one June to join, how many we are still on and what we're getting out of them.
Okay.
And then I also would like to see all the receipts for NJ's billing.
Any other directors? We got a motion,
Motion to adjourn?
yeah,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous vote, no one opposed, meeting adjourned, 5:28 PM, Monday, November 18th.